So, yes, today we are talking about anxiety. Why talk about anxiety in church, you might ask? Well, it turns out that we live in an anxious society. If you're not anxious yourself, you probably know someone who is suffering from anxiety. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental health illness in the US. They affect 40 million adults ages 18 and older. That's 18% of the population every year. That's almost 1 in 5 people. And these statistics are pre-pandemic. You can imagine that it's probably only gotten worse. Anxiety disorders are really treatable, yet only slightly more than a third of people experiencing them seek help. Anxiety disorders develop from a complex set of risk factors, including genetics and brain chemistry and personality and life events that you experience. Now, some anxiety is perfectly normal, the kind of anxiety you feel when you're going in for a job interview. Anxiety really is only a problem when it goes beyond logical worry, in an unreasonable and unwarranted and uncontrollable cycle. That's when you're in trouble. That's when anxiety causes real suffering that can derail all attempts at having a normal life of feeling joy and feeling fulfilled. It's like a trap you fall into and can't get out of at times. So today's sermon is based on this book. It's called Don't Feed the Monkey Mind: How to Stop the Cycle of Anxiety, Fear, and Worry. And it's by Jennifer Shannon, who is a cognitive behavioral therapist. It's a very short book. It's a very easy read. It has actually cartoon illustrations and everything, very large print, not too many pages. It's really practical in its advice and techniques, which are based in cognitive behavioral therapy. So let's talk about the monkey mind. Many of us have heard about the monkey mind, generally known in Buddhism, right? It's that idea that through meditation, we can calm our minds that chatter and hop around and swing around like monkeys. Now, in this case today, the monkey mind is a slightly different, similar but different thing. Our monkey mind really stands for the amygdala, which was in our story video. The monkey is the primitive part of our brain that gets us into anxiety trouble. It is true that anxiety is tied specifically to this teeny little part of our brain, the amygdala. This is also referred to the lizard brain because it is one of the most primordial sections of our brain and one of the least advanced of our parts of our brain, the least sophisticated. This part of the brain is constantly scanning for threats to our safety, and it's sending out alarms whenever it senses a threat. It sends signals to other parts of our brain that send hormonal and neurological signals to the nervous system, and it causes increased heart rate and increased breathing and sends people into survival mode. This is also known as the fight, flight, or freeze reflex. And this fight, flight, or freeze reflex is a really great thing to have in this adrenaline lift. It's a great thing to have. It's really helpful if you're being chased by a wild animal. It's not so helpful when it's triggered by more everyday stressors. But the overly anxious, they do get triggered by everyday stressors, resulting, in these uncomfortable feelings that the kids talked about in the video, the uncomfortable feelings in their body, and, really negative emotions associated with it, like fear and anger and shame. And when you're living in survival mode, overcome with anxiety, peace of mind is pretty much impossible to find because your brain has actually been hijacked by that amygdala, by that monkey mind. Now, the monkey is not all bad. Monkeys are not all bad, right? The monkey just really wants to keep us safe, and it thinks it's doing a really good job. But its alarm, when it raises it, it overrides everything else we want to do or want to act upon, to the point where we can't relax or experience joy or really, lead a productive and meaningful life. So when we experience overwhelming anxiety, it means the amygdala or that monkey is really working overtime. And it's very non-discriminating, indiscriminate, because it often sends false danger alarms nonstop. The monkey mind not only triggers when we sense we're in physical danger, it also triggers on social threats to our survival. Yes, it triggers on social threats. Well, it does this because of the primal need for us to not get kicked out of our tribe, right? This is a primal holdover for when tribes were necessary for safety, right? So the monkey mind is always vigilant, sending warnings when there might be some signal that you're about to get voted off the island. It's always monitoring. Are you respected enough to stay in the tribe? Are you loved enough to stay in the tribe? Do you even belong in the tribe? And when the monkey alerts us to these primordial threats, it's really not good at risk assessment. It can't tell a big danger from a little danger. It can't tell the bear chasing you from the little thought that maybe someone in the tribe may be a little upset with you. It really doesn't know the difference. It always errs on the side of safety. And what it does, it tries to call us to action on sometimes what are totally misperceived threats. It's a really unsophisticated part of our brain. Now, when our brains are hijacked by anxiety and the monkey is sounding an alert, we're really, really susceptible to making two mistakes that are not helpful. First, we often overestimate the threat. The monkey is screaming, so it must be a really bad threat. Second, we underestimate our own ability to cope with the threat and the negative feelings it causes. And unfortunately, there is no way to turn off or pause the monkey brain. It is hardwired. The point here is that really when we have anxiety, it's a call to action generated by the monkey mind's perception of threat. The monkey perceives a threat. It calls us through anxiety to action to do something. So I'm sure by now you're wondering, well, what do we do? How do we handle this monkey? But first, we need to look at some common assumptions often shared by highly anxious people. In other words, what particular kind of havoc is that monkey wreaking on people? Well, highly anxious people often have three traits of varying degrees. First, when the monkey mind goes into action, they have a need for 100% certainty. They have no tolerance for uncertainty. They need perfectionism. They need to not make mistakes, otherwise bad things will happen. And they also become over-responsible. They feel responsible for everyone's happiness and everyone's safety. And you know that all these assumptions are pretty much impossible, right? Attempting to live by these expectations just keeps the monkey sounding the alarm over and over again. After all, we know, right, that life is inherently uncertain, that no one is perfect, and we are ultimately responsible for ourselves, not for others. But yet, when we're hijacked by anxiety, we adopt this thing called the monkey mindset. We start thinking in these three ways. We assume that to be safe, we have to be certain of everything, we must be perfect, and that we must be responsible for the feelings and actions of others. Now, we all have these things we do to avoid or resist or distract ourselves from the negative feelings we get when we have anxiety. These things we do without even knowing it most of the time are called safety strategies. The bad news is that the safety strategies we're practicing are often the exact opposite of what we should be doing. They actually feed the monkey and they perpetuate this cycle of never-ending anxiety. Although they might provide only temporary relief, they really do not solve the problem at all. So what do these safety strategies look like? Well, a person who has trouble dealing with uncertainty may do never-ending research, or be an over-the-top list maker, or be a super duper controlling planning type person. They schedule every 5 minutes of their vacation, that kind of thing. This person might become inflexible and controlling. A perfectionist may procrastinate or postpone decision making because they're afraid they might make a mistake or they might make the wrong decision. An overly responsible person might be constantly checking in on others or doing other people's work or giving other people unwanted advice. But in the end, all of these safety strategies, all these things we do to relieve our anxiety, they just tell the monkey that the threat is real because it made us do something about it. We had to respond to it. And you can imagine what a life dedicated to responding to constant perceived threats might feel like, right? It can kind of suck the joy out of everything. Living in survival mode, responding to threats one after the other after the other is not fun. So when we respond to anxiety with avoidance or resistance, we confirm that the threat was real. We feed the monkey. And by doing this, it really maintains both our cycle of anxiety and it keeps that monkey mindset that we have to do those three different things to be safe. So how do we know if our strategy or anxiety reducing strategy is helping or harming? Well, there are a couple of ways to know if you are feeding the monkey or starving the monkey. Now, you're probably actually feeding the monkey if the strategy you use to relieve anxiety has to be done over and over again because it gives only temporary relief. If you're worried about your adult child and you have to text them 10 times a day to make sure they're okay in order to feel better, right? That's not it. That's not going to help. That's a safety strategy. The other thing is if the strategy takes you away from your goals and your values in life. So again, if texting your child 10 times a day to make sure they're okay is taking time away from, your life, what you really want out of life, what you want to be doing with your life, you can see that it's not a helpful safety strategy. So safety strategies are both things we do, like texting our adult child over and over again. They're behavioral, but they can also be mental, things we tell ourselves in our minds to feel safer. And the most universal mental safety strategy is worry. When we worry, we often think we are solving a problem, but often it's just a form of distracting ourselves from our feelings, right? We're ruminating over this problem, worry, but we're actually not distracting ourselves from feeling the feelings that are underneath the worry. The feelings underneath the worry are usually all about fear. In addition to worry, distraction is another safety strategy that isn't helpful in response to anxiety. So if it's been binge watching on Netflix or playing video games or going online or scrolling through social media, even more virtuous things like staying super busy or, kind of getting our mind off things by being in the company of friends and family. These things might make you feel better in the short term, but they don't really help in dealing with the anxiety in the long term. They're just very temporary fixes. And this is going to sound a little crazy, but even trying to relax isn't necessarily the best direct response to anxiety. If you're trying to relax to escape a specific anxiety, you are still feeding the monkey because you're saying, yes, this is a real threat and I have to respond to it by relaxing. You're telling the monkey that its concerns are valid. Virtually any direct response to anxiety involving distraction or even relaxation is unhelpful because they tell the monkey the threat is real. And of course, this includes, using alcohol or drugs or leaning on a safe person. And you know what? Even meditation and exercise. And although meditation and exercise are good for you, they don't necessarily work as immediate antidotes to anxiety. They still feed that monkey by telling it because the monkey made you do something in response to its anxiety. So it turns out that we feed the monkey constantly throughout the day, mostly totally unconsciously by performing these safety strategies, doing these things that make us feel better in the short term. They make us feel safe temporarily from the monkey's perceived threats and its anxiety alarms. But you can see how all of these things really are not getting to the root of the problem. But yet, there are things that do work. It's not, actually, it's really about training yourself into a new mindset. And you can't think yourself out of this problem, but it has to happen through learning and new experiences. Those are things that will actually rewire your brain to help change this anxiety, monkey-driven mindset. So through this process, there's the safety strategies that we usually go to automatically. The ones that don't work are replaced with something called expansive strategies. Now, expansive strategies are not really intended to reduce anxiety, because it's really hard to, you can't make the monkey go away completely, but they actually override, they're techniques that override our anxiety. And expansive strategies, in case you're wondering what they are, they're pretty easy to come up with because they are the exact opposite of safety strategies. So let's say if you have social anxiety and, at parties you're a wallflower because you have anxiety about approaching someone to talk and being rejected, right? That's your safety strategy, to kind of stay on the periphery. So the expansive strategy would be at the party to go and to talk to someone. Now, this is not going to be easy for someone with social anxiety. I mean, that's what's hard about expansive strategies. They're usually things we don't want to do. And ironically, they are things that actually produce some anxiety in us. But the trick to this is to start small. So in lower risk situations and kind of work your way up. So a socially anxious person probably shouldn't go approaching people at a party, but a socially anxious person can start a little conversation with the cashier at the grocery store or ask how their day has been or something like that. Little baby steps to kind of work your way up. The cool thing about these expansive strategies is that they break the cycle. They stop feeding the monkey. You're actually, by doing these strategies, you're actually pushing back on that monkey's assessment of a threat and how well you are able to handle it. And so when you kind of push back against the monkey and handle something and try something different, the monkey's mind just blows up. It just goes, pshh. And when the monkey's mind blows up, it's less likely to sound the alarm on a similar situation in the future. And over time, the monkey does get trained. It gets trained to see that certain situations are no longer threatening. Certain situations that would have been a threat in the past, they don't set the alarm off anymore. Using these expansive strategies are also great because they do create new experiences. They're experiences that can transform your mindset and rewire the brain. And the more expansive your mindset is, the better you can handle just about anything. You see more options, your world is bigger because you're out of that little spiral of anxiety. It's really about replacing this self-defeating cycle with this more upward spiral of growth and learning and experience. But in addition to these expansive strategies, there are even more ways to face anxiety that are effective. Unfortunately, they all involve some work in kind of going against everything we intuitively believe about what is going to help us with anxiety. Problem with anxiety is we try to go around it, we try to avoid it, but the only thing that works is actually to go straight through it. For the uncomfortable emotions and sensations that are associated with anxiety, for them to run their course, it's not only necessary that we have to feel them, but you know what, we even have to, this sounds crazy, but we have to welcome those bad feelings, right? Again, not easy, but it is the way. It's something that works. If you've experienced anxiety, you know that it comes with some really bad feelings. And those are the same bad feelings we try so hard to avoid by using these safety strategies that don't provide any real permanent solution. But that anxiety monkey, the monkey will just not let go of us until we actually feel the feelings that we're trying so hard to avoid. So instead of looking at these feelings associated with anxiety as negative feelings, it's much better to actually, flip the script and see them as necessary feelings. right? They're not negative, they are necessary. Because distracting yourself from feelings or bottling them up just doesn't work. Now, when we choose to accept negative feelings, negative or bad feelings as necessary feelings, a few things happen. First, we learn that we can handle our feelings, that our feelings are not something to be so afraid of, that we are not going to die by having feelings. We learn that feelings are often fleeting and don't last forever. Second, we are training the monkey. We're telling it, we can handle this, making it less likely to sound future alarms. And finally, we free ourselves because our anxiety no longer dictates our actions. So rather than constantly training the monkey as though it deserves a response every time it alarms, it's better just to ride things out when anxious. In other words, it's like the monkey is having a tantrum, and you just have to wait out the monkey tantrum. All of these actions promote resilience. They build the skills of resilience. And feeling the bad feelings is the only way to make them go away. All sensations and all emotions, as much as we hate them, they eventually burn themselves out. So there's no need to repress them or avoid them. It just prolongs the anxiety. The trick is, and this is an important trick, is to feel the feelings but not act upon them. So if you feel really anger and shame and fear, you don't go send someone a nasty email. No, you just sit with it and feel it and do nothing. Because what we resist persists. What we resist persists. So taking that idea to the next level, it's even more helpful if we welcome our anxiety-driven feelings and sensations when they come up. I know nobody wants to do that, but the more you welcome the negative feelings, the better you get at it. And this is called getting good at feeling bad. Getting good at feeling bad. Not going around it, but going straight through it. And there's some techniques that can help you get good at feeling bad. There's one called the welcoming breath to help invite the feelings in. You can also welcome the bad feelings by asking for more of them. Yes, by asking for more of them. Although it sounds crazy, it's actually a form of reverse psychology. It's kind of like, okay, that's what you got. Well, just bring it on. You know, it's kind of that attitude, or it's kind of like standing up to a bully. So if your anxiety is making you shake uncontrollably, you ask yourself to shake even harder. You tell yourself to shake harder. You know, if you're, if you're feeling the need to run around, just tell it to, bring it on, and I'll run around some more. I'll run faster. The whole point here is to break down this resistance we all have to feeling feelings, right? It breaks down the resistance and lets the feelings in. Because the more you can actually let yourself feel in the moment, the less ongoing anxiety you will be carrying around. So in the same counterintuitive vein, because all of this is really counterintuitive and sounds absolutely nuts, another thing you can do when the monkey mind acts up is to simply thank it and move on. Thank your monkey. So if, for instance, I'm having all this anxiety about this sermon, that it's not good enough, that it's boring, that everyone will fall asleep and snooze during the sermon, I can say, thank you, monkey. I realize you're sounding the alarm, but I can handle this. I do this every Sunday. And the trick is also not to react too hard to the monkey. You just kind of notice the monkey. You don't engage in the monkey's chatter, or even tell the monkey to shut up, or, in your mind, strangle the monkey. Not going to help. You just simply thank it and move on. Every time you refuse to react to the monkey chatter, the closer you will be to reclaiming your hijacked brain. And we all know it's a waste of time to argue with the monkey, so don't do it. Seriously. Another totally unexpected thing to do to manage anxiety is to schedule specific time to worry. Now, I talked about earlier how worrying is a safety strategy that doesn't help, but there is a way to flip worrying into something that does help. You schedule your time to worry, and by choosing what to worry about and creating a specific time, you are taking power away from the monkey to disrupt your life. So during your scheduled worry time, you can have a scheduled worry time every day. It may be lasting between 10 and 20 minutes. You just bring up your anxious thought and don't try to resist it. And then if you have anxiety that comes up between your scheduled worry times, you can simply postpone the worry. Tell the monkey that this will be addressed at the next worry time. This teaches the monkey that anxious thoughts can be postponed and they do not have to be acted upon immediately. And this is all because worry is often nothing more than monkey chatter. It will dissipate if it is welcomed and if it is tolerated, rather than resisted or acted upon. Worry is often nothing more than monkey chatter. It will go away if it is welcomed and tolerated, rather than resisted or acted on. So today, I hope you learned something about anxiety and strategies to handle it. Ultimately, the practices I've mentioned can help break the cycle of anxiety and lead to a world of new experiences and learning and some serious brain rewirement. If you suffer from chronic or extreme anxiety, I hope you will seek help from a professional and also read this book if you have any interest in or experienced any anxiety. I'll try to get that into the chat. And if excess anxiety has not been part of your life experience, first, be very grateful for that. And second, keep this information in mind because chances are you know someone who is dealing with anxiety. During a time in our country when anxiety and fear have actually been cultivated and weaponized to justify authoritarianism, it's really important that we understand the workings of the human mind. Our minds can not only be hijacked from within, they can also be hijacked from without. There are those looking to hijack our minds with fear and anxiety. They openly play to the amygdala, the most primitive, survival-driven part of the human brain, as a means to meet their own needs. Our country is full of hijacked brains right now. So if we as Unitarian Universalists are to transform the world with inclusion and justice and loving kindness, we have to know about the anxious mind and the dysfunctional coping strategies it produces. On the grand scale, it produces things like border walls and mass incarceration, Muslim bans, militarized policing, and all of this is done in the name of keeping us safe, keeping the monkey fed. May we and our nation as a whole realize that a primitive sense of safety is simply anxiety run amok, and that the values of inclusion, love, compassion, understanding, equality, and justice are the only means by which any of us can find true safety. Let us not put the monkey in charge. May it be so, and blessed be.